Hi, I'm Coach MK, founder of the Fitness Protection Program. I'm a run coach, not a life coach. We're never really talking about the running. Running is the tool. It's the conduit we use to examine the world we live in, as well as its impact on our own lives and the lives of the people around us. How we react to certain people and to certain stories tells us a lot about how we view ourselves. I'm committed to the thoughtful, intentional exploration of the importance of running so that no one discounts their own badassery, ever. Final note, this podcast is geared towards every runner who won't lose their home, livelihood, or health insurance if they show up to the corral with a hangover. Not that I'm encouraging you to do that, just saying. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the Fitness Protection Podcast.
I hate that we had to re-record this, and I know you were really disappointed in it too, but now the sound quality, there's just it's night and day better. We didn't have a microphone. I was still in pain. I was in less pain than I am right now, but I was also in the Ozarks with my family in a condo that was designed to be waterproof, basically, because it's a condo on the lake, as opposed to, which is terrible for sound, because it's sound bouncing all over. You need like a little room with padded walls and carpeted floors.
Padded walls.
Which is the opposite of what you need in a condo with water.
Right, where mold just grows at the drop of a hat. Like, oh my God, I inhaled and there was mold everywhere.
Yeah. Right?
Oh,
it was amazing.
Love that
oh my
climate.
gosh.
What was the best part of it?
The best part of it, the boat, Captain Daddy, watching my husband put that hat on. But this is the same man when we went to Casco, Maine, Point Sebago 2 years ago, was like, carried his laptop to the beach and did not bring a swimsuit. This year, he did not bring his laptop and only wore swimsuits, and that was not...
Hell yeah!
That was not by my pushing. He is like, he's getting into vacation mode, and the irony of that is I am now working more than I ever have. I've worked through every vacation that we've taken together as a family now, and he's finally learned to relax. So you go relax so I can work more, husband.
Yeah. My husband is not relaxing. He is making Chinese food for some friends who are coming over later, and they have 2 boys aged 3 and 6 months, and we're just going to embrace the chaos, and then there's going to be some Chinese food at the end. We're just going to leave him in the kitchen and let him do his thing, and we're all going to go outside and spray the kids with the hose and hope that they run off all their energy. That's the plan.
You are popular.
This weekend has been like very social. We've kind of set this intention to have a lot of people over because we really love this house. We've been living in this house for a little over a year now, and we finally have a kitchen that we love after years and years of living together and kind of just settling for whatever we could get in a rental. But we've always really loved to cook, and now we finally just have this kitchen that we've sort of settled into, and it's gotten to be a little unruly, but we really own it now, and it feels like, let's cook some food. And my husband now works, not at this particular moment, but this last year, more than he ever has. So he does not cook on weeknights basically ever. So the weekends are kind of his chance to be like, let's invite some people over and do some cool stuff. So we try to take advantage of those opportunities when we can, especially when it involves other kids for Roz to play with. She always really enjoys that.
I think it's really interesting, right? Because there's so few of my stories involved, and then we had people over, because it's so rare. Our house is just chaotic. It is not designed to entertain it anywhere other than the backyard. And most of the time it's too hot to entertain in the backyard unless we're in the dead of summer. So it's just funny, like the last 3 podcasts, like what you've been up to, or when we've talked during the week, it's like there are people coming over, we're getting ready for dinner, these people are, it always involves other people, and I'm just like, wow, Sarah's just a little social butterfly.
It is a part of our relationship and our family that we loved long before Roz came along. We always felt like we were too poor to go out, and we kind of were for a lot of the time. I mean, we felt really anxious about spending money that wasn't like strictly utilitarian, because first we were living off of a teaching stipend in Italy and nothing else. And then we were both in grad school for a gajillion years. And so, and our friends like to go out and do stuff. And we always felt really edgy about going out and doing stuff because like the anxiety about spending too much money always felt like it was going to take away from not only our fun, but possibly other people's fun. And we were those people a lot of the time that were like,
Time out. I want to be real clear. the two of you were living on your teaching stipend in Italy.
Yeah, it was 600 euros a month.
So you are a really popular social butterfly sugar mama. Boy, you just change every time you open your mouth to me,
I
Sarah.
was for years. Because it wasn't just in Italy. Then we lived on my stipend when I was in grad school because I got a PhD, which was fully funded. A lot of PhDs in the humanities are, and I always tell people, do not, under any circumstances, go get a PhD unless they are funding you. Please, for the love of God, do not take out loans to go get a PhD in like literature. Which is what I did, but I didn't have to go into any debt to get it. And they pay. Someone told me early on in applying to grad school that I should go wherever they were offering the most money. And he meant that very serious. He was like, listen, I know that sounds, crass and terrible and whatever. And what about going to the best program? And I'm like, no, go where the money is. You need to be able to live like a human being. And he was so right. And I'm so grateful that he gave me that advice and that I took it. Because that's what we did. And so my husband went and got a master's in music at Boston University, which, we have some guitars on the wall, but he took a pretty big left turn after that and went to law school. So you do not get, big stipends when you're in law school. You are paying tuition for real. So we were very lucky, yeah, that I was making enough money essentially as a teaching assistant while I was in grad school that I was the sugar mama.
Well, what that story means to me now is that I feel less bad about not paying you at the moment because I'm like, oh, it is Tristan's turn.
Yes. No, that's very true. And he feels that way also. That it is his turn. And when you and I first met, I was living in Florida, and we moved to Florida so that he could take this clerkship, that was a pretty, moving to South Florida for a couple of years was a huge change for us. And it took me away from the environment where I possibly, might have had more opportunities. I don't know. It certainly changed the trajectory of my graduate studies. And then obviously having Roz changed the trajectory of my graduate studies. And I finished my PhD while we were in Florida, but that was definitely a move that we made for the sake of his career. And we've traded off. He came to Italy for me after college. We've traded off a lot of times. And yes, right now, I think he does feel like it's his turn. And I really appreciate that. It really means a lot. He likes his job a lot and is currently in a really good place with it. But it's not a job that he wants to have forever. It's a really good job for him to have right now, though. And it means that I can take a pretty big risk, honestly, on something that we don't necessarily know how it's going to go, but it makes me really, really happy. And it feels very fulfilling and kind of like something that my whole self can be a part of, which academia never was.
Well, I really hope we could look back in like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years and be like, let's go back and listen to this podcast. Remember when you were like, Tristan, it's your turn? And like, because he's a stay-at-home husband, because we are, we've been so incredibly successful, but we'll see.
Incredibly successful.
There's a whole lot of people I think that need what we have to offer, or maybe it was just me over time. But it's when I think about programs like Rebuild and I think about the potential that's out there, I get really excited just because I don't see anything like it. And if I had, God knows I would have been on it, as I myself tried to return to fitness after all this time in bed.
Mm-hmm. I think Rebuild. The more people I talk to about Rebuild, and I've actually talked to a fair number of medical professionals about Rebuild because we have a lot of them in this community in Boston, and some of them I am friends with through Roz or through college or whatever. When people ask me what I'm doing, I tell them Rebuild is the thing that really impresses them. They're like, oh, I know a lot of people who need that. That doesn't exist anywhere else.
And it doesn't. I mean, I haven't seen it. I developed it with Alex Lanton, who's my physical therapist and the best physical therapist that I've ever worked with. And because a lot of the plans that they give people are very generic. He was like, I can give people a return to running plan, but the thing is, I can give them exercises too, and people are never going to do them. So it's the structure that keeps them locked in, keeps them interested enough, and sort of addresses the need. And the need that I know that I had coming back was I needed to be on some sort of a dynamic plan. And dynamic just means that it changes over time. It does not specifically mean it progresses from week 1 to week 4. It just means that, like, month in, month out, you're getting a new plan. You know, it's not like we're just turning the page and doing the same thing over and over again. And that's no disrespect to people who are like, you know, I have this 8-week plan and I love it and I just do it start to finish over and over and over. Cool. That's awesome. That works. You got it. That has not ever really worked for me and for a lot of the clients that I have. So with this in mind, it's something that's really easy to scale, that is designed for someone that is either realistically like coming back to fitness after a long period away. You know, life gets in the way and I don't really care why. We all have reasons and every reason is valid. Like, yay for adulting, welcome home. I don't really care what sent you off on what caused your break, but we can talk about it if you have questions. It's also good for people. I will always go back to Dr. D. Dr. D is trying to pass the boards right now. Good luck. We are crossing our fingers for you. I have no idea. That sounds terrible. Everything I know about the boards is from Grey's Anatomy, and I really hope you don't end up so stressed out that you have sex with a stranger right before they start and walk in sweaty. So I'm sure that doesn't happen actually that often. That was probably just for TV. Don't know. Grey's Anatomy, you're never really sure. But just saying, I get that it's super stressful.
Grey's Anatomy scared me straight. Scared me straight out of ever considering medical school. I tell you, those people, they confront some real shit in there. Anyway, Dr. D. No. No. Grey's Anatomy got to me too early for me to ever consider it. Got you. I did not come from a background with science enough that medical school would have been a possibility, and I figured that out my senior year of high school. Not that like I had huge stains on it, but if you had asked me for years, I would have said I wanted to be a biomedical engineer, and I had no idea that was just completely impossible until I was a junior in high school, and then realized like even something as like simple and non-specialized, as medical school, like that was just never going to happen. Like never going to happen. I had too much ground to cover to catch up on from my high school education. So when I see parents, this is a long way of saying, when I see parents spinning out about like my child's going to be behind, I'm like, I don't think you understand what behind looks like. There is a 0 chance possibility that your child is going to be a junior in high school and realize that the career they've been talking about for 10 years can't happen. Like, the type of thing that happens when you're moving from where I am to the circles that I've come to, it's so rare that it occurs that's when, you know, the gap becomes noticeable. But that's also why a lot of people, we talk about the accessibility gap, but we're usually talking about within like an urban area. We're not really thinking further out than that, like the people who live, I would say beyond Conifer or Limon here in Colorado. But now we're fully on a tangent. It's just funny to think that like, I cannot imagine, like, when you're a kid and you're growing up and, you know, people tell you everything is possible. There's a big portion of the population that knows that is just a lie, or that it's not true for us. And right. I feel like us is now a voting block that no one really knows how to approach. Yeah. Yeah. And that is super, super non-controversial territory. Not saying like I vote that way. I just feel like when we're kind of at this point where we talk about like the great big other, and we paint it with a really broad stroke, and even when we try to get it right, we don't see what we get wrong. Have you, like the Little Mermaid? Did you see the announcement this morning about the live action Little Mermaid? No. Oh, I saw people mad about it on Twitter, and I figured, okay, yep. I bet they're mad with a good reason, but I don't know any more than that. What? Tell me. I'd say define the mad. The reason, what they've done is they've picked an African American actress to do it. I want to say African American. She might be. I don't want to say just black, but she might not specifically be African American. I should have done my research before I jumped on. But where the mad is coming from is not that you've taken white little Ariel and made her black. It's that this is yet another like all the things in a story. All a mermaid really needs to be is a siren that wants to use the power of her voice to lure men to the bottom of the ocean to drown. Like, that's not about a color or a type, right? It's right. More about it. That's what, if you were trying to get at the heart of the story, that's really what a mermaid is. And so by what this looks like tokenism, even and this will be, and the back and forth will be like not about the casting itself, but about like this looks like this doesn't look like diversity. This feels like just putting a black person in a traditionally white role does not actually make this story
it doesn't change it, make it inclusive. You're not pushing any boundaries here by doing this. The flip side is like, but representation, and this is a story, and this is like, don't overlook what this will actually do. And by the way, you don't have the right to be upset. Like, what would make you happy? And so that's where the back and forth on Twitter is coming from. Twitter's an interesting place to kind of sit back and just watch the back and forth without necessarily getting involved, because people who feel really strong about this express it really, really well. So that's another interesting territory where it's like, we try to give you what you want and you just reject everything. And it's like, but no, actually, your process is flawed and you still don't see it.
Yes. And that critical thinking should not, when people are willing to come out and think critically in public about why something is not sitting right and why it's not enough, why it doesn't sort of fix the problem that you think it's fixing, that's the kind of thinking that we want and need more of, honestly. I think that it's critical that people be willing to kind of come out and say, hey, this is the thought process behind my objection. This is where it comes from. And this is where it's sitting with me. And I do feel like I see a lot of exchanges like that on Twitter. And unfortunately, there are a lot of really thoughtless and rude and pointless exchanges too. And I think that that's often the brush that it gets painted with. But I do hope that people who think Twitter is just sort of a morass of people yelling at each other and however many characters or fewer, are also seeing the way a lot of really smart people are using that limited space, that constraint, to really craft, I think, amazing arguments that have made me think about a lot of different things.
Shoot,
yeah.
Before I go completely off topic, which I hear... I'm open to feedback. I hear that's a problem that I have, is that, but luckily you are really good at gently guiding me back on topic. Not to take us off topic there with mention of The Little Mermaid.
Stop rambling, MK.
I know, I'm the worst.
I think on this one I get equal blame in the tangent, but it was a good tangent. Tangents can be really interesting and they can be really informative, and sometimes there is value in following them.
Well,
but what
really
we do
is.
want to say, that there really is, and because part of what we're doing here is we're thinking out loud, and we're doing what your therapist always says to do. Let's explore that.
Explore that, because acceptance is observation free from judgment. When you are able to kind of sit back and talk about something and kind of let your feelings about it sort of go on either side, it's just like float around you like clouds, and then you can sort of from there, like Taylor Swift. All right, so the pseudo intellectual soup du jour is, if you saw what happened last weekend with her record label, she puts out, like, Taylor Swift does not speak on her own behalf very often, and she released this blog post via Tumblr. And now you're seeing a lot of sides taken. And the pseudo-intellectual side is to be like, well, Taylor did this to herself. She's being really immature. I'm not a bad feminist. I'm judging Taylor based on her actions. She has had these petty feuds. I've watched this for years, and I can't support Taylor. That's the pseudo-intellectual take, in my opinion. And the reason I'm very pro-Team Taylor in this, because different advantage. I saw her play at the Bluebird Cafe back in 2006 when I had moved back to the United States. She opened with a girl named Sunny Sweeney, who I'm still a big fan of. Sunny was signed by the same label but never hit it quite as big. She's very, very, very traditional country. So, of course, she's going to have a more niche audience. But when Taylor signed, that was the deal, and this was held against her for years. Her father made a $2 million investment to buy a board seat in Big Machine Records. Thought being, if this is going to be a long-term investment, we're taking a chance on you because you're a brand new label. You're taking a chance on us because we're brand new artists. I have a lot of business experience. You don't. I want to make sure that this ship is going to be steered appropriately. It was the fact that Taylor's dad bought into the record label as sort of like synergies to protect his own interests and his daughter's interests going forward, knowing that she wouldn't own her masters. Like, that was part of the negotiation. If she won't own her masters, then she's going to own a portion of this company, which legally she couldn't do at the age of 15, so he made a stake. That back and forth was reported, but the headline was, Taylor Swift's daddy buys her a career. And this was used against her for years, about, well, not everyone has $2 million lying around that they can, like, buy a record label. So that became the story And then over time, she proved her mettle and she crossed over and she did, Red was an incredible album in 1989. Style is still one of my favorite songs, amazingly good. And she went on to do some really great things. So now you have to take her seriously. No one remembers or cares that her dad made an investment in the label until now. So all the mess that's going on, I never completely bought, because I listened to the lyrics and was like, this doesn't make sense to me. That the presumption that Reputation was about the Kim Kardashian Kanye thing. I always thought it was pointing to something bigger, but I looked at a lot of her work and thought it was all pointing back to this initial contract that was a 13 to 15-year contract and a really big deal, and how it had gone from we have some control over the company to realizing how little control you actually have if you're not the majority shareholder of a company. We even talked about her contract in one of my business school classes. So, that's how big of a deal it was when this happened in 2006, 2007. So, but the way we talk about that story, now all of this is public knowledge. If you Google it, it's there. You'll see it. But these are dots that no one wanted to put together. And the way you feel about this has less to do with your understanding of it and more to do with how you feel about Taylor Swift. If you think that she was really petty for going after Kanye, you probably never stopped to ask, was that really, I don't like your tilted stage, I don't like my gilded cage? Was that really about Kanye? Did he put her in a gilded cage? I don't know about that. So when you went now through this lens, if you look back through her body of work, you can see it very differently if you choose to. But if you're like, no, she's petty, and I'm showing you how open-minded I am by not supporting this woman, then that is what makes that a pseudo-intellectual argument. And pseudo-intellectual hot takes like that, like I don't support Taylor because of the way she acts. Never mind that the way she acts is misrepresented. Like that hot take
right.
is common with college students because they're so overloaded with information, and you probably saw it all the time. All of us had some sort of, like Marx. Everyone goes to college and the really smart kids are like, Marx really had a point. And then you see economics at work and you're like, oh.
That's so funny. I have to jump in here for a second and say my husband just started this blog, which is a whole nother story, but it's called What to Think About Art. And yesterday he wrote what I thought was honestly a really amazing essay about books I read in college ranked in order of how big of an asshole they made me after I read them.
I gotta see his post. You gotta put that in the show notes. I want to read this now.
I'm gonna send it to you because it's really, really good. Yeah. Well, and he talks about is similarly this, and I think this was high school. It was also high school for me. Reading Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead.
I knew you were gonna say Atlas Shrugged. Oh my god!
I said The Fountainhead.
Fountainhead.
I didn't say Atlas Shrugged. I mean, honestly, I barely remember which one was which, but I read that book and was like, oh my god, this changes everything. I know so many more things now than I used to, and no one understands the world like I do.
This book spoke to me.
This book spoke to me. A lot of people had that experience with that book at around the same age, and he was one of them. Especially in college, where we really like to inhabit the contrarian persona, and pseudo intellectual hot takes are currency in college. They get you attention.
Yeah, and they do in blogging and on Twitter and on social media. Mm-hmm. It still very much does. That's how BuzzFeed exists. But funny enough,
Absolutely.
BuzzFeed was the one that looked around and said, well, the contrarian argument here would be to go back and look and say, hey, this is what she's been saying all along. We just weren't listening. And when that article finally went up, I shared it the other night in that celebrity gossip academic style Facebook group, and no one responded to it because it's a group full of women that think that they're really good feminists by not supporting Taylor Swift. You know what I mean? So this position is my credibility. And it's so hard to divorce people from it. Like when you think about, it takes a big person to look back and say, yeah, I was an asshole in college. I had all these thoughts. I thought I knew everything. And to have truly evolved from that, to be like, yeah, I know, that was terrible. But that's a place where a lot of people don't actually ever get, because it's so much easier to double down on it. Ego is the enemy. And until you're at a place where you can say, yeah, that was wrong, I can't believe I ever thought that, it's hard to truly progress. So that might be a huge tangent, but the magic might be in the meandering, where I tell you that to tell you this. A lot of the things that we think about what we do and why we do them might be factually incorrect, and facing it can be really hard and ugly. and we're here for the hard, ugly work.
We are, and also that's the kind of hard, ugly work that you don't get a lot of applause for. It does not get recognized in a way that gives you the reassurance that you need that it is the right hard, ugly work.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I am most proud of that we do, especially in Rebuild. Rebuild people are doing really hard work in Rebuild that there is not a lot of support for in like the rah, recreational running community.
Yeah. Like what you were saying to me earlier, we were talking before the podcast began about all the progress that I've made in the past, since my injury. And I'm like, well, when you think about when that started, that was May 2017. And granted, yes, the 9 months I was just dating a baby, but that's 2 years I've been working to come back to where I was before that baby. I've had a lot of setbacks, and it's really hard to stay focused on the process and just doing what you need to do when you're fixated on the problem that needs to be solved, which I probably wouldn't still be here doing this if I thought that way. I'm kind of lucky that I have the background that I do and a perspective that's so different. This is just work that needs to be done as opposed to an achievement that needs to be unlocked, or I need to get here. And when you can, it's easier to, and granted, I know that that's a big mental shift, but once you get there, it's really easy to stay and you worry a whole lot less. And then you have a habit. And that is really at the heart of what we're trying to do with fitness protection in general, is maintain that healthy habit. Everything's easier when you're fit, even though the work and maintain is harder. Getting to maintain is a really hard thing to do. Rebuild was designed for people that don't have the bandwidth to do it right now or the fitness level yet, but might have the muscle memory and the experience to get there faster than someone who is new to fitness. Plus, it's really just insulting and hurtful to be put in a room full of beginners who are experiencing everything for the first time, and I don't want that to be taken away from a beginner ever, as their eyes are open and they see what they're capable of. But someone who's coming back to fitness has already had those moments. It's a different journey. So respecting that journey and being like, hey, I know you're not where you want to be yet, but look what you did this month. That all that stuff you didn't want to do added up to 56.9 miles in your first month back. It added up to an 80-minute long run when you hadn't done one in a really long time. Look at what you did instead of like what you haven't done yet, and being able to celebrate what works instead of fixating on the problem that needs to be solved. When you view your body as a problem that needs to be solved, every day is going to be a struggle. And that is what we're trying to unpack in Rebuild. It's like, you're going to get there. It's going to happen. It's a hell of a lot more likely to happen if you do the work. I have no idea how long it's going to take, but that doesn't mean that it's going to suck every step of the way. Like when I sit back and think, like, yeah, it's been 18 months. My baby's 18 months old. That 18 months has really flown, and I've only been functional for 11 months of them. So this doesn't, I'm pointing at the bandages around my waist. Even this most recent surgery doesn't feel like a huge setback, because I'm like, I want to get back in the habit.
That's right. And you did get back in the habit, and you talked openly about how hard it was to get back in the habit, because when you were finally kind of really strong enough to start again, it was cold and dark and you had babies to struggle with, and that was a big ask for you. But in March, when you came to Boston, we ran a lot. Like you did some really good running in that time. It's not like this whole last 18 months you've just been like, oh, why am I not PRing again yet? You've been working really hard, and that work has not paid off in the ultimate way that it is going to eventually, after a lot more time. But it has paid off in little bits and pieces, and you've had runs that you've talked about in this really glowing way that just make me so happy, because I can see that you're seeing the work and you're seeing the work manifesting itself.
Yeah, it's easier when you have that good run instead of like worrying over the bad run or worrying over like, oh, that was kind of boring. There's something so amazing when you have a good run that will keep you going till the next good run, that will keep you going till the next good race. When you can focus on, it's knowing where to put your focus that keeps you moving forward. And to be perfectly clear, I have not given up on the idea of PRing. My goal is the same as it was in 2015. I want to recapture all of my PRs in my own name. Because I borrowed bibs from people back when I was fast. I didn't think I deserved, if I didn't have my name on my bib, if I wasn't fast enough to have my name on a bib, then I didn't think I belonged there. And I didn't, but this is back before we knew we'd have online databases of times and stuff. Like, this is in the 90s. But I digress. Like, I want all of my PRs back in my own name, and I think I can still get faster. That's not off the table. I'm doing the work now to get there. But if it's not like I must PR this time, then I don't have goals. It's kind of the wrong way to look at it. I'm just trying to see how strong I can get from here to the next race. And when I'm close to those goals and those times, y'all will know.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to watch that happen. I can sit around and wait for as many years as you want. I will be here when it happens, and I'm going to be so excited. And I feel exactly the same way for what it's worth. I talk a lot in the Facebook groups about like not worrying about this, not worrying about that. I ran my mouth last weekend on Ask the Coach for a long time about why I would really like for people to try to dismantle the fixation on hitting a certain 5K pace in a workout that they can't hit yet, and being determined to see that as some sort of a shortcoming or a sign that they're doing something wrong. Like, I want the workouts with 5K pace to make you feel really great at the end. And if that means we got to change the pace, then we change the pace. And I was really, really grateful to people who asked questions about that and gave me the opportunity to talk about that a little bit. So, I mean, if you want to look at me as the coach that tells you to slack off and run slower, fine. But I fully intend to PR the marathon. Fully intend to PR the marathon and run a lot faster in the marathon than I ever have before. That is very much something that I see myself doing in the next 5 to 10 years, and I'm really excited about it. I have not taken my eye off that for a minute.
And here's the thing, you've got to stay excited about the space between where you are and where you want to be. As long as acknowledging that distance excites you, because that's work we could do, that's stuff that's going to be fun to execute. That is what's going to keep you motivated going. When you look at that gap as proof positive that you suck, that you always have, that you're broken, that you're a problem, that you're problematic because you have work to do, that's really demoralizing. It's hard to get anywhere with that mindset. And this is one of the reasons why mindfulness and the mindset is so important. I need that on a t-shirt. The gap between where you are and where you want to be needs to excite you. You were not excited about that gap. You felt guilty for that gap when I met you.
Absolutely. It's not like I met you and then I was like, oh, you're right. No. It took a long time to really sit with that and get to a place where I could look at it differently and see like the orange that you talk about in that amazing Twitch that you did a couple of months back, and see sort of like, oh, every time I grow a new orange, what I'm really doing is creating a new baseline. And this is only like this work that I'm doing right now is the work that is going to be like that. This is where I'm going to start from on the next training cycle. And even in 2017, when I had been training with you for a long time and I was building up to the Twin Cities Marathon, and I was all like, oh my God, this is going great. This is such a great training cycle. I'm so excited. And then the race was super disappointing. It took a long time for me to get over that, in the sense to see that as something other than, well, like I failed and I'm disappointed and all that was wasted. And that was not wasted. There was nothing about that was wasted.
Because again, about the way we talk about it, the race should be the reward, and we deserve a reward. Inputs should always be equal to the output. And it's one thing to acknowledge it, like the input doesn't match and that's not fair. How do you deal with it and keep moving on? Like the EAT, now that I know my audience better, I realize why the presentation didn't work for one crowd, even though it was never problematic for my local runners. My local runners who had done the EAT, I mean, they hated it. They knew when it was coming. They were just like, oh, I'm sick. I'm going to fake sickness. That they knew terrible. The purpose that it served, and they knew why we had to do it. And they were able to get excited. Right, whenever it would be like, okay, here's your A pace, your B pace, your C pace. Okay, here's your 140 pace, and it's a 12-minute mile. And we know if you had to run this marathon tomorrow, you could do the whole thing easy effort and finish. Okay, and that finish time at a 12-minute mile would be 5 minutes and 15 seconds. But, based on your A pace is a 10-minute mile. And your 10-minute mile for 26.2 is not going to happen. And that finish time is a 4:15. So, yay! Somewhere between 4:15 and 5:22 is where you're going to be. And people would go like, that sounds awesome! It was never like somehow 4:15 was a mandate. And how, I don't know how that was miscommunicated in the next iteration of my training programs, but it's something that I think I finally am narrowing in. Yay, pain pills and sitting down with a pen and paper in a bed for a week. I've sat down and done a lot of thinking, and I think I know how we're going to represent it this time, and the logic I want to use people to think through it. But my people always got so excited when they were doing the AT, and they would bring out, okay, so your ballpark marathon prediction time is based off this, like a 4:45, and they would just be like, that is amazing. And they knew that was, again, unlikely. Right, it's like the 4:45. It'll be somewhere between a 4:45 and a 5:22,
right?
And which is based off of their 1:40 pace, and that never made them angry, and it never made them sad. It was just like, okay, this is where I am right now, and where in that range I'm going to be is dependent on the day. It's just information. It was never a judgment or an assessment of who they are or their commitment level or what type of a person. They never took that personally. It's just like, okay, so we've got 16 weeks, and if you work really, really hard, this range is not going to shift. You might be at the higher end of the range. You might do all the work to think you're at the higher end of the outcome, and then show up with the stomach virus and have to do the whole thing slower than easy effort. When you accept all of the variables, then you have to understand why you're there. So I like what we're doing in shortening this down to just 10 weeks. Kind of meeting people where they're at and saying, hey, you know what, we're not going to be able to change all of your thoughts overnight, but if we can get you into a more relaxed state and accept having a higher baseline and get just an acceptance, again, being observation without judgment, and you can just observe the outcome, then we can get excited about that space between where you are and where you want to be. And final note on this one, I did the EAT myself back in 2016, before the Jack and Jill Marathon that I had to DNF. Output predictor for me was 3:17. Now, I knew that there was no way I was going to run a 3:17 that year. Like, I was not there yet. But what that did tell me was I still got it in me, and that was what I needed to cling to. Like, a 3:17 is still possible. It's not out of the realm of possibility. There was no part of me that was expecting or disappointed that I didn't hit it that week. It's like, that's proof that the old MK is still in there. And that is what I needed to focus on to get excited about the space, so that the next time I did the EAT, I would come up with a faster number and a smaller range when I considered, preparation and outcomes. I don't know, there's just like this expectation of I have to be here, 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 and then you're continually set up for disappointment, as opposed to being like, hey, this is where I am, cool, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I'm really, I revisited this blog post that I wrote a little while back. This was in January, and I was like, what should I do for my long run this week? Because for whatever reason, it wasn't in Training Peaks yet. And you were like, I don't know, what do you want to do? And I was like, kind of want to go for a long run. The weather's it was supposed to be like 5 degrees, but at least no precipitation of any kind. And you were like, why don't you aim for 3 hours? And I didn't really ask why or what it meant or anything. I was just like, okay, that sounds really fun. And it was really fun. And at the end of the day, it was just kind of something that it turned out, even though I hadn't been running anything close to that long for a while, I could still do. I had the fitness to do it. And it didn't really need to mean anything other than, cool, I actually have a really good base of fitness right now, and we'll see what happens in this coming year. And there was something about having a long run of 3 hours that was not for any purpose. It was not a test. It was not a barometer. It didn't have to mean anything. It was just in so many ways like an observation of what my body was going to do and how I was going to feel about it mentally and physically. And I think that this is really the year where, looking back on what I did last year, which was not plan any races in advance and kind of really let how I was feeling in a given week guide what my plans were going to be, I feel like there is a chance that I will step up to the starting line of a marathon without any pace numbers on my watch or any, I really hope it's this kind of expectations about it, but just ready to really execute it the best that I can on that day and be curious about what the result's going to be. And I know that probably sounds like really airy-fairy, but I think that this really gets us into a conversation that we started having a few weeks ago about self-love and body positivity. And, the idea of coaching and running as a way of learning what our bodies are capable of.
Absolutely. What you just said does not sound like airy-fairy or loosey-goosey. It's the opposite of I don't care. You care a lot. What you're doing is preserving your longevity by only caring when it matters. So I know it drives people crazy, like, MK, is there a 10K plan? I'm like, no, there's not. You don't need one. Just like show up and race and do it. Because when we're doing endurance event, like your base of fitness is so ridiculously high in fitness protection that you don't need to hone or dial in or prepare. You just need to go, hang on tightly, let go lightly, in any race where you show up. That's something they used to say, I think, when back in my poker playing days. I mean, it is probably not what you really want to be doing in the casinos, but
yeah, have poker playing days too. We definitely need to have a separate podcast.
Yeah,
because I have a poker trophy that I'm really proud of, and I never get to talk about. That's going to be next week on the Fitness Protection Podcast.
Next week. Oh my God. I'm part of a poker group in New York, and whenever I go to New York, I play. They meet every Friday night, and they have for like 2 decades.
That's amazing.
It's one of the reasons I do the marathon. I'm so prestigious about the New York Marathon, is that, and always have been, is that it was always an excuse to go back. And the weekend that it falls on always falls on poker night Friday and movie night Monday at my friend's house. He was one of my best friends from college, who's a terrific entertainer. Like, never got married, no kids. He's like, all I do is throw parties, and that's what I do. He's not even like a crazy womanizer. I like the way I live, and the way I live has not changed in 20 years, and there's something really beautiful about that.
So wait, what kind of poker do you play, really quickly? This is my tangent. I'm owning this tangent. I'm making MK ramble. Go, MK, what kind of poker do you play?
No limit Texas Hold'em. Tournament style.
You and I were meant to be. I truly feel this. This is the ultimate sign.
To me, the challenge was like walking in with $200 and seeing, not trying to swing the bat
exactly
to get the most in each hand. It's a patience game. It's like, I want to see if I can make it to $1,000 buy-in table before dinner. I want to see if I can make it to the back room by Tuesday. But it's, it's a very different.
Yeah.
It is. I treated it like an endurance endurance sport.
Well, I was much less fancy than you because I was in college and we did $5 buy-ins with my group of friends, and I just like to buy in with $5 and say, let's see how long I can stay at the table. Let's see if I cannot get out and have to go, actually pay attention to the stupid Monday Night Football game, because I didn't want to do that. And as a result, I tended to not play hands that I had no business playing ever. And I won a lot, and the boys all kind of hated me, and then they kind of loved me, and that was my thing in college.
You were a sugar mama, a cool girl, and I mean, I'm learning. This is all like the Sarah podcast. Things you didn't know about
the
Sarah.
Cool girl part was definitely also part of this, and that was often problematic, for sure. But in all fairness, the boys that I was friends with really did not need me to be a cool girl. I think they all loved me a lot more for who I actually was than who I was sort of trying to be a lot of the time. And we ended up living together my senior year, and they're still really close friends, and they're great people, and a couple of them are dads, and it's been really cool to see them become adults. And it's interesting to remember how hard I used to try to impress them and be cool for them. That was a big thing for me in college, especially because I went to an all-girls high school. I know, this is the Sarah podcast. All the tangents. Stop rambling, Coach Sarah. MK's gonna have to rein you in, and we all know she's not good at that.
No, God. I know, I'm terrible at that. Well, it's funny when you think about being who you are. The best of life advice is the worst coaching cue. That note I sent you before the podcast. So I'm working on I think what might be a blog post where I talk about really good advice is actually a terrible coaching cue, because good advice is very high level, but it's hard to execute. Coaching cues, to get the desired result, tells you how good the cues are. 140 is a cap. It's a great place to learn easy effort, but it does not, but you just need to run easy. It's great advice, but it's really hard to do. So the coaching cue is keep it under 140, and know that you'll never feel it 100%. So when it comes to the life advice of just be yourself, that is actually really terrible coaching cue, because when I look back at the times that I've gotten in the most trouble, it's when I was just being me and meant I was in the wrong place. So when we think about how the things about us, our greatest strengths and our biggest weaknesses, I think about my senior superlative. I was voted most tenacious in my senior class. Yeah. They're like, you aren't the smartest, you aren't the prettiest, and everybody knows that, but you outwork everyone around you, and that's why you win. And I thought that was a diss. Like, you're saying I'm not good, so I have to work. Which is why I get so, like, protective of, like, Des, when people are like, she's a grinder, she's a blue-collar runner. Like, are you saying she's not talented? It almost took it, like, personally, because that was how people, I felt, talked about me. You're saying I'm devoid of talent? Well, you know what? J-Lo isn't the best singer. She's not the best dancer. She's had the longest career, because that woman is amazing. She's incredible to look at, and she has not stopped trying to put on an amazing, robust performance in 20 some odd years. So thought I'm going to end on is like all the things about yourself that need to be changed. When I was 17 years old, I was told I was most tenacious because I wasn't most talented or most smartest. I've been watching Drop Dead Gorgeous. I love that. I wasn't most smartest. And that really hurt. I didn't see like that was something that I needed to leverage. Yeah. Then when I just started my job on Wall Street, someone took me aside, a person that I really respected, and she was like, look, you just need to accept your J-Lo. J-Lo don't lose. There ain't nothing wrong with being J-Lo. She ain't the best out there, but she promotes the hell out of herself. Even though she's not the best singer or the best dancer, she can put on just as good of a show as Mariah Carey. And now that this woman is almost 50, it's like you could be bitchy about it and say like, well, she has to have the costumes and she has to have the dancers because she doesn't have the voice. She has to have all the production because she doesn't have the talent. That's just a terrible way of looking at someone who is thoughtful enough to put together a really incredible performance. So yeah, maybe my whole life I've allowed myself to be victim of the same pseudo-intellectual nonsense. But that's also why I'm so quick to call it out in like, damn right I'm Team Taylor Swift because I followed the story from the beginning, and she doesn't have to be perfect to be right in this particular instance. I read those texts that her boss sent her, and they look a lot like some of the nasty shit that my ex-boyfriends would send me and be like, but I was being really nice. It's like, no, he was being terrible. Those are just nice words. Or the people that are like, bless your heart, and you know that they're not actually praying for you. That's not what that means. So, like, you know when you see it and kind of call it all through. But it's really hard to sort of see through what's being said if you think where you're starting from is something that is just broken and wrong, which is definitely how I viewed me coming out of Carthage, Tennessee.
And you know what my superlative was? This was not senior year. We didn't do senior superlatives because my school, they superlatives would have been an issue. People would have gotten very upset. We didn't have rankings. We didn't have valedictorian. Like that was not. They were being very careful with us because we were so sensitive. All you girls are so sensitive. But we did have superlatives on the soccer team, and I was the most conscientious. AKA scored the fewest goals. That is what I heard when they said most conscientious. What I heard is, oh, you scored no goals, but you're nice. And I, like you, I thought that was a huge dig. I was like, oh, this is all you could think of to say about me. You couldn't even like pull up one thing that made it sound like I was talented. No, they could not. And I couldn't even run the quarter-mile lap around the soccer fields. So they were probably right, but I thought that conscientious was such a consolation prize and such a like thing that was only going to essentially get in my way in life. Miss Congeniality, that's right. She doesn't get the scholarship money. That's not how that works. But I have grown to be pretty proud of being an award-winning conscientious person because I do think that it has value. And I think that it didn't have value in the career that I was in for the last 10, 15 years, or at least not in the ways that were going to get me ahead. I think it had a lot of value to people that I taught and people that I worked with and mentored and that kind of thing. But it's so interesting.
And you don't have to be the most athletic to teach people how to keep going in this endurance event called life. Sometimes you need most tenacious over most smartest. Sometimes you need most conscientious over most talented. Maybe we found our place
because I think you need most conscientious most of the time more than you need Miss Tough Love. Tough Love is oof.
Oh God, yeah. We conflate it with bullying. Like, we conflate bullying with, like, legit concern. And it's so manipulative to look at a person and be like, yeah, I did it for your own good. That's self-righteous nonsense. Like, it's a good thing I bullied you because, like, you're better off for it now, aren't you? Like, no.
It's so twisted when you think about, like, how self-love and kind of forcing people to be positive about their bodies and love themselves. I mean, it comes in that form sometimes. Like, you just have to love yourself. And toxic positivity is really a thing. It's a really shamey way to shut down feelings that people are really having and bringing up.
Yeah, because it's okay to not be okay. it like acknowledging it and meeting someone where they're at and saying, I hear you. Everything's easy when you're already fit. The work that most of our people are doing in rebuild is some of the hardest work they will ever do, but it's temporary.
Yeah. Yeah. It's temporary, and we're not going to force you to pretend that you're super excited every day. What we do want you to do is find the wins. And I think that there's a key difference between kind of forcing people to be positive when they don't feel positive and asking them to look at something a little bit differently. You know what I mean? And I know that we've been wanting to talk about this Twitter thread, to go back to Twitter and the really, I think, amazing conversations and observations and insights that do come up in the form of Twitter threads. This Twitter thread by Sam Dillon Finch.
Who, by the way, he was the one that introduced me to the Black Mermaid side of things.
Oh, okay.
He was like, you're not fixing what's wrong. If you think that you're fixing what's wrong by making Ariel black, you are completely missing the point. Of diversity, of inclusion, of what needs to change about some of these stories. It was never her skin color that needed to change. And I'm like, whoa, that made me think about Toy Story 4. I know you and I both had very strong feelings about that, and there's a lot wrong. I was excited about it when it was first coming out because my roommate from grad school was pretty senior at Disney. I think I've told the story before about how we were at the San Diego Marathon long time ago, and she kept like taking these conference calls and coming back with color swatches and be like, what color do you see, what color do you see, what color do you see? And we're like, what are you talking about? What's she doing at Disney? And then what she was doing was picking the color for Anna's hair based off of all these marketing surveys they'd done. So if you identify as a redhead, you probably look at Anna and you probably see her as a redhead. If you're a brunette, you probably look at Anna and you see a brunette. If you're a strawberry blonde, you probably look at Anna and see a strawberry blonde. And that was intentional.
Fascinating.
To not put her in a box, but to make the box like almost an illusion. So that's kind of the space that the team that she works for at Disney solves problems like that. So when I got word that the code name for Toy Story 4 was Peep, and that Rashida Jones had a hand in the screenplay, I was like, whoa! And I was excited. Man, and I did not get what I was expecting. Yeah. So I was pissed about Toy Story 4. I still am, but I don't know if we have space for that right now. But like when I think about like what the problems of in inherent, the things that we do to try to fix problems when you don't have people who are that are having these the non-trolls that are telling you, people like Sam Dillon Finch thoughtfully and quite expressively, this is what's wrong with sticking a black mermaid in there or making the mermaid black, how you're still missing the point. If you don't have people like that at the table, you're probably not making up a solution. You're probably digging a bigger hole.
Yeah.
But Sam Dillon Finch is totally worth following on Twitter. The guy's amazing. And I want to say thank you to the Mother Runners who introduced me to him.
I think you were the one who introduced me to him, and the things that he writes, particularly about body positivity and about kind of the pressure to perform body positivity in his role as an activist for eating disorder recovery and many other things. That resonated with me so strongly. And the way he says that, he prefers to give advice when he's on the other side of something because he knows he has a sort of responsibility to make sure he's nudging them in the right direction. But sometimes, and I'm going to quote him here directly, when I perfectly package that hope for an audience, I can delude myself into thinking that I've cracked the code and therefore can tidily leave a struggle in the past, the perfect conclusion to the chapter, as it were. And so, I mean, think about what I was just talking about on one of my tangents a little bit ago, like, oh my gosh, I've just had this really wonderful enlightenment about how a 3-hour run just doesn't have to mean anything and all of my potential and this and that. Like I have part of the reason that I kind of feel the need to say at the end of that, like, I don't want that to sound all airy fairy or whatever. I have this fear sometimes that I'm trying to package the different changes that I've been through and the mindset shifts that I am on the road to making. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's just really easy. All you have to do is just, love yourself and everything will be fine. And that's something that I'm really conscious of because I don't want to put myself in that position where on the days when I don't feel fine and on the days when I don't think I have it all figured out and I'm having the kind of imposter syndrome that I'm very used to having had for many years in academia, that I don't have the space to be just as open about that in the real moments of struggle. And I think that that's something that can happen so easily, particularly in spaces where it's not okay to not be okay. And that's why it's so important to us to make fitness protection a space where it is always okay not to be okay.
It's always okay not to be okay, but I'm always going to call out toxic positivity and the type of mindsets that will keep you from getting to a good place, right? That fixation on a finish time, that fixation on a PR in this training cycle, on this day at this race. And I'm like, man, if we just let loose a little bit and stayed really, really fit year round, you could be like, you know what, I feel good. There's room at Sim. Let's try it. And then if there's bad weather at Sim, you're not crushed because it's only 10 weeks. And Tucson's 2 weeks after. You can have a lot more laissez-faire about, like, it has to be about this day. And because again, about the 10K, when you don't need like a super duper specialized 10K plan, you can just wake up and say, you know what, I feel really good. It's been a great week. The kids are out of town until Sunday. I think I might do this 10K that happens to start at 6:30 a.m. on Saturday morning and see what I got. And you're like, why not? And then you just show up and you blow your own mind. If it goes badly, you can say to yourself, well, I hadn't really prepped for it. But if it goes well, you can be like, yeah, I had that. Who knew? So you leave yourself open to good things as opposed to demanding good things and being disappointed when they don't present. So, and that's the opposite of not caring. That's the opposite of not having goals. It's the opposite of being, that's just knowing when to open up a can of whoop ass. You can't open it every day, y'all.
Are you kidding?
Yeah,
and the cans, have you ever seen a can that was like this big? They don't exist. Cans come in like a few sizes, and even the most kick-ass person is not going to be able to buy like an industrial size can of whoop-ass. They don't sell that for a reason. Too heavy to carry around.
But we build them in the fitness protection program.
Yeah, we do.
Saying. $30 a month.
That's a really good price for industrial size cans of whoop-ass.
Right? One that we refill. Even though I'm kind of down at the moment, I'm looking forward to hitting the reset button and being like, guess what? Yeah, August the 1st. Because that's when I know New York is not completely off the table yet. It's still a possibility. I have no idea. It is definitely not going to be what I hoped it would be at the beginning of the year. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a total disaster. And I'm really excited to hit the reset button on August the 1st, because I will hopefully by then have been easing my way back into running and back into the healthy habit and getting ready for the best time of the year for training as far as I'm concerned. I love August, September, October. It's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Best time to train. And I look forward to, and all I can do is be excited about hitting the reset button and moving forward, as opposed to really being wigged out and frustrated about what I have not been able to accomplish for the past couple weeks. Because I tell you what, you worry about what you present, Sarah, and you present none of those things that you worry about at all. Like, you really and truly don't. You're so good at this that, like, I was listening, and granted, I was in a lot of pain, a lot of physical pain, and I just had a very difficult conversation with my oldest daughter about the surgery that I was about to have last Sunday. And, I saw you right before the podcast, and you're like, are you okay? And I'm like, no. It had been an emotional day. And then I listened to, and then it was like, you were so good at Ask the Coach. And I looked at Alex and I was like, they don't need me anymore. And he was like, oh no. Don't you start this. This is ridiculous. Like, the world needs you. It's going to be fine. Like, you were so good at it. You made me self-conscious for a minute, Sarah, which is exactly what needs to happen from a business continuity perspective. Like, all it does is, like, reinforce I made the best choice possible with you and whatever. Like, it's all good things. But in that moment when I was feeling a little vulnerable, that's where my brain went, like, they don't need me anymore, because that is how good you are, saying all the things I would have said. The only thing, and because I had to drop off when there was a follow-up question about the fitness number, and I think that was the one that you wanted to touch base with me about.
Yes.
Before the podcast. Yeah, about how that fitness number is it's a measure of training stress, cumulative training stress load, and how an athlete really shouldn't worry
We need
about
you because you speak training peaks.
I think you yeah.
We need you because you speak
well,
training
we're going to do a session at some point.
I am excited for that.
And more data doesn't necessarily make you more better, but I think, like, that was the only thing I was like, oh, I should have prepared her for that. But, like, when you stumbled there, that was when he was like, see, people still need you, and plus no one is ever going to be able to tell Sarah that she did a great job, and it mean the same thing that it does when you say it. So if no other reason, Sarah needs you. And I'm like, the fact that so that's how good you were, that, like, in a bad moment, I had to be like, I don't matter anymore. So you're amazing. You're doing you're doing a great job at this every step of the way. And of course you feel like an imposter because, this is not what you went to Harvard to do. And it seems like a really hard left turn. And I'm sure at dinner parties, people are like, you're doing what? Oh, you're a coach? That's cute. It's because you're in the Northeast and they're going to be looking over your shoulder the second you mention that, because we are not a startup and I don't want to become one. When I think about the path to next, it's going to be falling outside a lot of the traditional boundaries, but, maybe that's exactly what most Tenacious in 1996 still is today, and that what we needed to do was stay outside of the boxes and stay outside of the boundaries, and maybe, just maybe, we're at a place where we have enough knowledge and credibility that truly being ourselves, is going to be an asset. And there's nothing more exciting than that, but it's also hard to tweet.
Like being most conscientious in 2001 is now that's where it's paying off, baby. It's paying off.
Shoot, yeah.
I'm really proud of that. That makes me really happy. This is probably a good place to let people be done with their runs, because we've been making you run. We've been making you run a little extra to finish us today. But you're welcome for that, because it's making you stronger. Yay! And it's growing your can of whoop ass bigger every training cycle.
Totally. Oh my gosh. And I have no idea what this podcast was about, or even if we covered any of the points.
We're going to write the show notes after. That's the advantage of doing that. Everybody, you're coached and loved. You're loved so much that the tangents are all for you.
The magic is in the meandering. I don't know who put that in the show podcast review, but thank you to whoever put that in the podcast review. That was amazing. The magic is in the meandering, and we hope you found some magic today, everybody.
See you later.
See you later.